distracted from time to time, it's because we're all trying to figure this out while the camera's pointed at my face and I'm talking. So I'm going to invite Ilya on. He and I will chat a little bit. Hopefully we'll get our other guest on here as well, because I think the two of them together is going to be quite an extraordinary conversation. So we want to make sure that we make it happen. Ilya, I'm going to invite you on screen now. Hold on one sec. And just to make it a little more exciting, Ilya, I'm not sure you're not showing up here either. So this is going to be exciting for me too. I'm going to keep trying with Ilya. I'm going to keep talking. Thanks for being here. And, you know, this is live interactive TV. Here we go. I gotcha. Ilya, you should be getting that pop up on your screen now. You've been invited to the show. And let me try one more time. We're going to make this work, everybody. Let me try one more time. And let's see where Ilya is. Come on in, Ilya. Gonna try one more time, Ilya. Let's see if we can make this work. He's coming. I can feel it. I can feel it. How's that going, Ilya? Let's try one with it. Try to refresh your browser or try to hit the sound button in the middle of your screen. Ilya, I don't know if that's for you or not. We're trying to make this work. Let me try one more time, Ilya. Hang on there. So you know, Ponomarev is Ilya. And we're having a little trouble here. And so you guys get to see how I do under pressure. How am I doing under pressure? A few hearts now would be an appreciated thing. There he is. Excellent.
Yes.
I'm so glad you're a technologist who has spent time in Silicon Valley, so you can look at this and laugh and say, yeah, this is how it works.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have invited... Yeah, we have invited, as you know, the former Prime Minister of Ukraine, and those who know me notice I've been avoiding saying his name because I have no chance in hell of saying it correctly. So I'm going to let you tell us about him while we try to get him connected here and on the show.
Yeah, we're talking about Alexei Goncharuk. That's the first Prime Minister of Ukraine under Vladimir Zelensky.
Yes.
And still, to my mind, he's by far the best Prime Minister of Ukraine. And he was, at the time, the youngest Prime Minister in the world. He became the Prime Minister when he was 35. And he's a marvelous guy. I know him for ages. And he's right now very actively working in Ukraine. He's working with Russians. He is working with Belarus people. He is right now fully concentrated on supporting movements in the former Soviet Union, the movements of freedom fighters, and he's just a great guy.
Yeah, that's well, and I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. And by the way, everybody, if for some reason we cannot. First, am I saying his first name correctly? Alexei?
Alexei, yes.
Okay, Alexei. If we can't make it happen today, and we all know stuff happens, and Ilya and Alexei are in the middle of dealing with a war, so stuff happens fast and furious and needs constant attention. If we can't get him today, we'll try to get him next week.
Yeah, he has certain issues with the connection because he is not in Kyiv. And since Russian army right now started attacking all the energy power plants in Ukraine, so we have internet shortages from time to time in different parts of the country. Generally, that works fine, but there are some issues.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, and I'm glad you explained that because it's helpful for us to understand that. If we can't make it work today, you and I are going to have a great conversation, and we'll follow up with him next week. It's interesting. One of the things you told me in our chats back and forth as we were getting ready for the show today is that even though you two are good friends, you are a Russian, he is a Ukrainian politician, and that there are things that you absolutely do not see eye to eye on. And so I'm guessing you were looking forward to having a little bit of a public debate with him today.
Yeah, absolutely. We have very close views to what's going on, but nevertheless, I'm viewing it through the eyes of a Russian politician, and he's
Yes.
viewing that through the eyes of a Ukrainian politician, and that's different. We still have this debate about where the war would end, because the general attitude of Ukrainians, is a very peaceful nation, and it's from one side it's interesting because the historical tradition in Ukraine, it's Kazakhs, and Kazakhs were the world's most famous mercenaries in the Middle Ages. The main sources for all wars in Europe were either those Ukrainian Kazakhs or Swiss Highlanders. And the Swiss guys, they still are the guards, for example, for the Pope, for that very reason, because they were the famous mercenaries. And Ukrainians had this this tradition, and that's why actually they are fighting so well against the aggression that is happening right now. That's about the historical tradition. But nevertheless, they never had an organized army which was kind of competing for the land. And that's why the attitude of the present-day Ukrainian elite is very simple. Let's liberate Ukraine. Let's come to the Ukrainian borders. And the rest is not our business. It's the business of Belarus people. It's the business of Russian people. And I think that that's not how the war would actually end, because I think that the war would end in Moscow. It will not end on the Ukrainian border, and that's probably the main thing that we are discussing all the time between ourselves here.
Well, and as you can imagine, that is very much of the type of question that I wanted to ask you both. Let's So first of all, let me say, Lucas, if you get Alexei and you know his screen name, let me know so I can invite him on. If you're just joining, we're having some technical problems from inside of Ukraine, so we have not been able to get Alexei here yet. We're hoping he'll still join. If he can't make it today, we'll certainly invite him next week. And I just want to reinforce that he's the former prime minister of Ukraine. We're very honored to have him. And certainly in a war zone, it's understandable that there could be, as Ilya explained, things like internet issues. And obviously we're an online show, so internet is essential. I'm wondering, while we're here, Ilya, if you can talk about some of the current stories in the news. For instance, what are your thoughts on the EU's proposed ban on Russian oil imports?
I think that it's actually surprisingly good. I mean that Europeans, they just recently were kind of hesitant, and all the messages that we were getting from different European states, and especially from Germany, is that, we understand that our dependency on Russian energy is too much, but we'll not be able to refuse it in the near term. And maybe by the end of the year, we will start phasing it out and start the transition. Right now, we are talking about very firm and committed ban on Russian oil imports, not gas, but oil, within 6 months. And that's a fundamental change. And I would say that knowing this industry very well from my past and knowing the impact on the Russian state budget, I would say that the impact from oil exports for Russia is way larger than the impact on gas exports.
Well, it's interesting. Bo has asked a question in the chat that I want to ask you, and it's very much what I was going to ask as well. See now all the war ends. And I was going to ask something similar, which is what happens if the war ends? Do these things like the embargoes go away, or is this more of a permanent thing? Maybe you can take on both of those questions.
Oh, that's actually a very hard and tough question for me, because obviously I'm thinking about the future Russia. And I am very much afraid that what has started now, it will not end. And as soon as Europe will get rid of this dependency, they will not get into restoring it. And that limits a lot our financial maneuver in terms of restoring Russia. And I already saw that in 1990s, when I would say relatively progressive government, I have a lot of issues with that government, but nevertheless, they try to do things, they try to make reforms and things like that, but they were extremely constrained financially. The country was in ruins after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and Putin is a lucky bastard. He got to power when the oil prices went up, and he received an enormous financial wealth at his personal disposal. And that helped him to solidify the power, and that helped him to become really popular, because Russians started to see him as the guy who actually can do things, and who started to pay pensions, to increase salaries, to restore well-being, so to say.
Yes.
And still, obviously, for people who are very familiar with how economy works, it's obvious that he was still in way more than he was actually spending for people. And that's a huge problem. Russia could be right now a really prosperous state, and the democratic state, and the state which works in the benefit of all people. But nevertheless, even those leftovers that remained after Putin and his cronies actually consumed that pie for themselves, even those leftovers were enough for Russians to feel like, at least something is positive is happening.
Yeah, even the crumbs were enough wealth to make the people happy.
Right. And I see that Bio is asking that he meant more about Ukraine, and
yes.
That's another question. I don't think that the unity within Ukraine would actually stay, and we are in the shows of our TV channel February's Morning that we are running here in Ukraine. We're discussing this a lot. And to my mind, obviously, Ukrainian elites would start fighting with each other the really next moment after the war is over. And I even was saying that, to my mind, the best scenario for Zelensky would be the one of Winston Churchill, when he won the war and was replaced with somebody else who was in charge of restoration of economy. But Churchill remained as the greatest prime minister of all times who actually won that war. And I think that for Zelensky is actually the very best scenario. But I don't think that that would actually happen. I think that Zelensky would immediately try to be re-elected. He obviously will be re-elected because he is right now extraordinary popular. Ukrainians, they always split, and they never solidify themselves behind one leader, one hetman. It's a tradition. They always split the power. But he would be re-elected, and then his popularity would start to slip inevitably. And as a politician, as for his heritage, I think that's not so good. But most likely that would actually happen.
So we actually have a question here from our audience member, Big Fan, who we love because he's a big fan. And it's interesting because it dovetails with something I wanted to ask you. I want to go back to something you said a minute or so ago that made me understand, I think for the first time, that even given the situation you're in today, where you're in Ukraine and supporting Ukraine, your goal is to go back and be part of a successful, progressive Russian government. Do I understand that right?
No.
Okay.
My ambition is to go back to Russia and form the government. like being part of it.
All right. Well, I'm glad we put that on the table, because that's really very helpful. Because we never explicitly got into that before, and I think it's really useful for us to hear that, to understand where you're coming from and your point of view. But it also, frankly, hearing you say that, I think gives us hope for a world with a much better relationship with Russia for the future. I think, other than perhaps Mr. Putin and some in Russia who support him, I'm guessing that's what most people in the world would like to see.
No, definitely, because you see Russian opposition, obviously, and that's normal. It's is divided into several political groups, and one group which is most visible in the West, but which is, I would say, in Russia, way more unpopular than Putin is so-called liberals. They more not liberals but neoliberals in the modern political terms, and they basically trace themselves from Yeltsin times, which are extremely unpopular in Russia.
Yes.
And that's why those people are also pretty much unpopular. As much as I like personally people like Boris Nemtsov, for example, who was assassinated by Putin's cronies, it's most likely with a nod of Putin himself. But in Russia, his negative approval was like 90-95%, because he was very much associated with the most brutal and painful neoliberal reforms of 90s. And even people like Alexei Navalny, who is very popular among youngsters, among the new generation of Russians, among the elders, among the older part of the population, he is very unpopular because people do afraid that he would lead them back to 90s as well.
Yeah.
And that's what our debate with the other members of Russian opposition is all about all the time. As I say that we need to present Russians with a dream of future, with a positive dream, with a vision that they would actually share. And currently, all such inclinations of Russians, they definitely want social justice, social well-being. They care mostly about schools working, about healthcare, about quality of roads, about low unemployment, that kind of things. And obviously, liberals, they are associated with opposite things.
Yes.
Both leftist, and I belong to the leftist movement, so I am very internationalist in my beliefs. I believe in power to the people. I believe in the decentralization of power. I believe in grassroots politics, in direct democracy. That's part of my fundamental belief. So I'm more like left libertarian, or people may say as anarcho-communist. That can be, the description of my political views. But that is not very much aligned with the neoliberal approach. From the other side, we have a very powerful nationalist movement, and nationalist movement by itself is also divided into two parts. There are nationalists who are imperialists, and they are loyal to Vladimir Putin because they see in Vladimir Putin the guy who is restoring the Russian Empire. Some of them say it's restoring Soviet Union. Some of them say that he's restoring Russian Empire of Tsar times. And actually, by the way, the old-time Russian aristocracy, the remnants of it, they are very loyal to Vladimir Putin because of that, because they also want the restoration of monarchy. They want restoration of great Russian Empire as it was before 1917. But the other part of nationalist movement, which are ethnical nationalists, they're the other way around. They are currently very much supporting Ukraine. They're even fighting for Ukraine. The largest chunk of Russians who are right now fighting on the Ukrainian side with the invaders are Russian nationalists, ethnical nationalists, because they say, okay, we want Russia for Russians, we want Ukraine for Ukrainians, we want Belarus for Belarusians. And that makes us allies, but obviously our view on how the state should be structured after the victory is also different.
Yes. Yes. Okay. We're getting a lot of questions from our viewers, and we're going to get to as many of them as we can. I have two more things I want to ask you before we go back to their questions. And one is, again, to go back to something you said. Here in the United States, if someone said on a talk show, which is what we're doing, I want to form a government, we would say, oh, you are declaring yourself as a candidate for something. So I'm going to ask you the obvious question. Are you telling us that you are a candidate for something in Russia? And if so, what is the job that you're running for?
Look, I think it's a little bit premature to say that. Because to say that we are running for a certain job, we first need to create that job.
Yes.
For example, I am very much opposed to the Russia with the powerful presidency. I am very much for parliamentary republic. And again, I'm saying I'm even more inclined towards the direct democracy. So right now, my biggest ambition is to form the new legal constitutional system of new Russia. Most likely it would not be a Russian Federation as we know it now, but nevertheless it would be some Russia and maybe Russian Republic. And to form this constitutional layout, we need to win. So right now, my job is to form a coalition that would be able to win over Vladimir Putin, that would either make elites to rebel against him, or lead the popular uprising, which would remove him from the office with the force of our arms, but nevertheless form the new system.
And is it safe to say that that work is being done now? I mean, on a daily basis today, so that when the time comes, you're ready?
Yeah, you know, my personal approach, I'm open and frank here. I was thinking that Vladimir Putin is there to stay for another 10 years.
Yes.
Because there was actually no significant threat for him from within the country. And all the tricks that he was able to do to stay in power, you know, nobody could have prevented him from doing so. And he had enough money to bribe people, to pay them some peanuts, but nevertheless, to keep them not happy but satisfied. With the invasion into Ukraine, he actually started a countdown for himself to step down, and most likely he would not be alive very soon. So now it makes a lot of sense for us to think about what this layout would be after he's gone, and help him to go as soon as possible.
All right, Maggie asks a great question, but before we go there, I need you to tell us about your foundation called Bravery, because what I want to make everyone here aware of is there's a button on your screen. It's probably the second from the right near the top of the screen. It either has a $sign on it or it says pay host. If it says pay host, I want to assure you that I'm the host with Ilya and we're not being paid. We're raising money for Ilya's foundation. Yeah, we're shaking our heads and saying, no, we're here for the same reason you are. We're committed to seeing a successful outcome of the situation in Ukraine today. But if you hit that button, it looks like this. You can donate $2, you can donate $1,000, you can donate anything in between, and every dollar will have a huge impact. And where the money today is going is to Ilya's foundation called Bravery. And Dr. Dan, thank you for paying for the show. Royce Malley,
Thank you very much,
Lucy.
guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you everybody for paying, because it's going to make a huge difference. But we need you to tell us more about your foundation, and then tell us the URL so people can go and read up about it as well after the show.
Yes, we're doing a pretty unique thing, what nobody else is doing. Because many people are raising money for Ukraine, and I'm very thankful for everyone who is participating in this. And Ukraine right now is getting a lot of support, and it's really needed in Ukraine. There are humanitarian purposes, there are military purposes, defense purposes, a lot of them. There is a lot of help coming for Ukrainian refugees, and there is certain fundraising networks that are being managed by my friends in the Russian opposition who are getting money for Russian refugees who left Russia because they couldn't stay Vladimir Putin's power. But to my mind, those people who left Russia are those who resigned from the fight. I want to support those who are fighting. And our nation helped those who were part of Russian military, who were part of Russian government, who were part of Russian propaganda machine, but who decided to resign and speak publicly that they are against the war. Because by doing this, they're splitting the elites. They are sending the message. They lead by their example. And it's no matter what they have done in the past. What is really important is what they are doing at this very moment, because for them it's extremely risky. When they are doing this, they are being considered as traitors by Vladimir Putin, so they receive criminal prosecution, they receive even physical threats. Some of them we are smuggling out of the country and they're joining our forces here. Some of them we have to pay for their legal defense because they go into jail. And right now there are already several dozen of people like this, pretty well recognized inside Russia. We are telling stories about them in our media project February's morning, showing them in public, and they lead by this example. And to help them, we need funds, and I'm very thankful for everyone who is donating right now. It's really for the good cause.
And I also want to make a point. When you click this button and you see that the lowest donation is $2, your $2 makes a huge difference, because $2 in Russia, I think, is a lot more money, or it buys a lot more than you might think here in the United States. So $2 is great. $1,000 is great. But also just doing what you can, and then we're going to get the URL for Ilya's foundation so you can share it with other people as well. Some people would love to support Ilya and his foundation, but they're not here today. Maybe they can't make it to the show on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, but they would still love to support this, because what you're describing is you're actually using this money to pull people out and dismantle the war machine from the inside. And that's really a brilliant, brilliant thing to do. Can you tell us what the URL is? Is there an English language URL that we can go to see more?
Right now, the easiest thing is to send some donations via PayPal. That's very easy to remember. It's info@anticenter.org. info@anticenter.org. Very easy to remember, and it goes straight into the fund. I am very thankful. Those who want to do it via cryptocurrencies and whatever, you can contact me. I will send you the BTC or USDT or whatever wallets would be convenient for you guys.
Well, let me make this easier for you, Ilya. Contact me, and everybody here is going to get an email from me between now and tomorrow, and I will get that information from Ilya and share it back to you. Thank you, everybody who's using the button and making the donation. Now let's get to some of your questions. And I thought Maggie's question was one that I'll bet just about everybody here is asking. Let me flick back here. Maggie asks, if my screen keeps popping away, she asks, and I think everybody is asking the same question, are you not afraid to speak out like you are right now?
Guys, I'm already at war, missiles are flying above our heads, right? So I was always speaking pretty openly in the past, but nevertheless, right now, what are the constraints, guys? It's too late, it's either us or them. And, I am anywhere with my machine gun and, surrounded by people with weapons. So we really are fighting.
Yeah. And so Big Fan again makes a great point here. It's not a question, but I want you to address it if you think there's more to say. He or she, I don't know if Big Fan is a guy or a gal. Russia and Putin are not the same. Thank you. We never want Russia isolated or outcast. I think that's a big part of what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, they're not the same. But it's the same question whether Hitler and Germans were the same during World War II. And by the way, they were in a way larger degree than in the modern Russia. Because even by official polls, Putin recognizes that some 25% of the population is very firm against him. And they said those who were not afraid of telling this to sociologists, because when you've been called on your phone or you've been visited your house and asked certain questions, that means that they know your phone, they know where they live. So there are a lot of people who just refuse to answer. Even in that situation, 25% of the population say that they are against this war, that they want Putin to go. And that means that's some 30 to 40 million people, proportionally from the Russian population. So it's quite a lot.
Well, and here's another great question. And I'm going to do my best to pronounce your name. I'm guessing it's Violetta. What did Ilya mean by the war will end in Moscow? I think that's a great question and a great thing for you to maybe talk about a little bit more.
I mean that the last bullet shot during this war would be the one which goes in Putin's head. I think I'm clear enough.
And that answers another question, which is someone asked, do you think that is how Mr. Putin's life will end? So I think we got an answer to that question too.
Maybe with a rope. I don't know.
Well, it's
with a rope.
I think it's the same outcome. It's just a different mechanism. So, how close to collapse do you think the Russian army is?
In terms of military situation, they lost the possibility to advance, but they didn't lose the possibility to fight. So with the dominance of Russian military in the skies, why Ukraine is always asking for the no-fly zone, with the Russian dominance in the skies, it's very hard for Ukraine to stage an offensive. It's hard to concentrate heavy equipment to advance. But nevertheless, they are doomed because they cannot advance. And in the war, it's one or another. You cannot achieve certain balance and stay there forever. Ukrainians are fighting for their land, and Putin is fighting to conquer some others. And Russians do not understand why we need to do this. They have been fed with the story that they're liberating Ukrainians from some mythical neo-Nazis, but that's not the case. And also, people who are in the front lines, when they're coming back home, they communicate it to their families that it's all false. And that's why the support is starting to deteriorate. It's already visible in the polls that the support for this war is on the rapid decline. And the more economic difficulties we will see, the more rapid the decline will be. So it's always very hard to predict about the timing. But to my mind, it would be extremely hard for Putin to survive another year.
So, Ilya, one of the questions I want to ask you, because we've scheduled this as a 30-minute show every week. We've got a lot of questions. Can you stick around and answer some more of our audience members' questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Lori has been asking a couple of questions that are of a similar theme. What is life like for civilians today in Russia, and is there a military draft?
For civilians in Russia, basically people don't feel that war. They're watching TV series, and that's what Putin likes to do. Currently, there is a big debate whether there would be a military draft, a mobilization. And I think that would change a lot if Putin would dare to make this mobilization. That would change the attitude, because again, in the same polls, when people are saying this, 74% right now is the official figure of people who support Putin, but among them, 1% is saying that they're ready to fight this war, just 1%. Yes. And that means if others would start to be drafted, his popular support would decline extremely rapidly. And he understands this. He may be, because he is like a corner threat, so he may decide to go for this, because without it, it's absolutely impossible to conquer anything else in Ukraine. They're stuck. But I don't think that he would dare. That would be another suicidal move for him that would speed up his decline a lot.
Let me interject here that we'll keep Ilya as long as he can. He'll answer as many questions as he can. When he has to go, he'll let us know. If you've asked questions previously, feel free to put it back in the chat box, because just like on your screen, they scroll away and it's hard to get to them all. So if you have a burning question you want to ask, feel free to put it back in the chat box just to make it easier for he and I to answer it. We have a question from Maggie again. She asks, and again, I think this is a question that everybody is wondering, and I think your opinion is a great one to get. Do you think Mr. Putin will use nuclear weapons against the West?
I don't think so, because he would be faced with immediate retaliation. He is, again, to my mind, he is not a crazy man. He is not the guy who is ready to commit suicide. When I'm looking at his lengthy tables, because he is afraid of contracting COVID,
yes.
That is not the behavior of a person who is ready to commit suicide. No,
yes.
He is not a fanatic. He is a kleptocrat. He is a crook. He is a mobster. But he is not a suicide guy. He made the mistake by invading into Ukraine because he had bad intel. That was an obvious mistake, but that's not because he was fanatically, just at any cost wanting to destroy the country. That's why I don't think he is bluffing. He wants the West to believe that he's crazy and that he is ready to use nukes. He maybe go ahead and make some nuclear exercise somewhere, in the Arctic, to show his readiness and whatever, and he's already making a test missile launches and whatever. But to use them actually, no, I don't believe that is true. And I think that the United States security force is actually watching the situation extremely closely. And as soon as he would see that Putin is actually preparing for something like this, I think that's when he would be treated like Bin Laden was.
One of the things I want to ask you about, because it's now May 5th, and we've heard a lot of talk about May 9th in Russia, and that, well, just to explain, I mean, in Europe, VE Day is celebrated on May 8th. It's a big deal in Russia on May 9th. There's a big parade in Red Square and et cetera, et cetera. Is this a day that he is looking at and saying, I've got to have something to show my people on that day? Should we expect something from him that day or even in the days leading up to it?
So obviously, he is looking for some victory for that day. But I think that because he is controlling all the media, it's pretty easy for him to declare whatever he wants a victory.
Yes.
You guys probably don't know this, but if somebody is not aware, the former soccer championship has been won by North Korea, because the guys in North Korea said that we actually won it. And North Koreans, they do believe that they won the soccer championship, but they didn't even take part in it because they did not qualify. But nobody learned about this. And that's more or less what's going on in Russia. Obviously, not to that degree. I am a little bit kidding here, but most likely he would say that he liberated Mariupol, and that was the key victory, and that helps to secure the land corridor between so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People Republics and Crimea. And that's a major victory. And the rest is technical things, which would be cleaned up within several months or so. But in general, the war is won.
And that misinformation, or technically it's actually disinformation, is a huge part of what you're doing with your YouTube channel, February Morning. It's called February Morning to refer to the morning of February 24th and the invasion. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing there so our viewers have a sense of what's going on and the value of it?
Yeah, sure. And if you don't mind, let it be the final question. We will continue the next week. Obviously, I am here. I'm not going anywhere. So February's Morning is, yes, it's a media project that we have created immediately after the war has started, and that's the only Russian language media which speaks from within Ukraine. There are several which speak outside Ukraine. There are some in Poland, there are some in Czech Republic, some in London, but we're the only ones who are speaking from within Ukraine. and we are inviting Russian politicians, Russian just activists, Ukrainian politicians, very high profile, to tell people the truth. We're obviously hosting some news, and we also have a Telegram channel, which is like information agency, which works 24/7 and is being renewed every 5 minutes in average, about what's going on in the field of war and the general inside Ukraine, and also in Russia, because it's already partisan war, which starts in Russia, and people are using Molotov cocktails to burn drafting stations, for example, and police cars, and the cars of those who actually support the war, and putting this new swastika Z on their cars. So we also are telling about these events for ordinary Russians, and we have overall audience about 1 million people, so it is significant.
All right, we're going to let you go, Ilya. Thanks for being here today. Go ahead and hit that end button on your screen, and you can get back to the good work that you're doing. I'm going to keep chatting for a few more minutes, among other things, to remind people to hit that pay button if they can for your Bravery Foundation. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. And
I'm really thankful for everyone who was watching, and for everyone who donated.
Still some questions
for organizing this. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Ilya. Please bring your questions back next week. We're here every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We will try to get the former Prime Minister of Ukraine next week. There was obviously some kind of internet issue and he could not get online. So we'll try again next week. I mean, it's understandable that in those circumstances, there could be some connectivity issues. I will include the information about Ilya's foundation, the information about his channel. Lucas, I know you're jotting this all down for me. The information about the Telegram channel as well. We talked about that last week. We'll continue to talk about it. It's very interesting, even though the YouTube channel is in Russian, it's very interesting to go there and just see what they're doing, even though you don't, unless you're a Russian speaker, you don't understand what is being said. It's still interesting to see what's happening there and how information is being fed back to Russians who may not have access to other accurate information. It's also interesting to go there and see how many people are watching. Hundreds and hundreds of people, when I visited, have been watching. So let me remind you, there's a button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. It either has a $sign on it, or it says pay host. Excuse me. When you open it, it looks like this. A $2 donation is great. A $5 donation is great. I don't know why there's the $7 button is red, but that's great too, as is $500 or $1,000. Anything you can give will help Ilya. And I think when you hear him talk about how the Bravery Foundation is literally going to people that otherwise would be helping the war machine in Russia and helping them get out, or giving them legal defense, or doing whatever they can to make it possible for them to A, stop supporting the Russian war machine, and B, get out of there so that they can be safe and have a long, healthy life. I think that's an incredible mission for his foundation, and I hope you'll support it. So that button up there, even if it says pay host, the money is not going to me, it's not going to Ilya. Well, it's going to Ilya's foundation. Every dollar we collect will go to Ilya's foundation. I'm not being paid. I'm not being paid to be here in Poland. He's not being paid. You know, we're here for the same reason you are. We are committed and doing everything we can to help this war end fast, soon, and the right way. So thank you all, everyone who has paid today. Look for an email from me either tonight or tomorrow morning. It'll have the information we talked about today. Please come back next week. Tell your friends and family that we're here. Check out other shows we have about Ukraine on Beams. We have I do a show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 o'clock. So I'll be back at 2 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. I do another show on Tuesdays at 11:30. We've got other shows about Ukraine as well. Check out the Beams website. It's beams.live. thank you for being here. I'm keeping this window open as long as people are hitting that button and paying. So I hope you don't mind that I'm going to keep talking, but that's what I'm going to do. So as long as you all want to support Ilya and his foundation, I'm happy to talk all day. We can call this a telethon if you want. We'll call it a beamsathon. And thank you for your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all of them. Bring them back next week. We will get to them. It's really fantastic to be able to take your questions and answer them. I don't know where else you would get access to someone like Ilya or Alexei, who's the former prime minister of Ukraine, or even access to both of them at the same time, which is still our plan. We had a little technical glitch today, but that's our plan, to get them both here. And as you heard Ilya say, they're not going to agree on everything, which I think is going to be very, very educational for the rest of us, because, I hope we have some real spirited debate and even fights here that break out so we can hear both sides of it. And it's fascinating to hear Ilya beginning to describe his vision and the vision of others for the future of Russia. And I think what he's describing, and I think that's the vision of Russia that we all want, that the world wants. So anything we can do to support them is important. And your being here is supporting them. You're obviously hitting that button and paying for the show is supporting them. Thank you, HBean1. Thank you, Ellen Sabi. Anything you can do will make a huge difference. I'm actually going to stop now, hit the button, turn off the show. I am sometimes famous for coming back and doing a little after show. I'm going to grab a glass of water, come back in a few minutes. If anybody's left and you want to ask more questions, we'll do that. Otherwise, thank you again for being here. We'll see you next week, unless I see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock on Stop Putin Now. And thank you again for being here.